Hey, this is Phil with Creature Control. Do you get a lot of bugs in your house? Today we're going to look at some things you can do around the home to deter insect activity and reduce the conditions conducive for pest problems. So, the first thing I noticed looking at this house is they've got a lot of mulch. Someone's put a lot of time mulching this garden, and it looks great from an aesthetic perspective. But the thing about mulch, it puts a lot of nutrients into the soil, but it also retains a lot of moisture. And moisture is, most insects need a moist environment to live in. So whenever you have these huge mulch beds against the foundation, you're going to be retaining a lot of moisture, and it's going to be creating an ideal habitat for earwigs, centipedes, things like that that will crawl in and burrow under the mulch and then get up to the foundation. They've got this mulch laid right up, so it goes right up under the siding. And so any pests that are nesting in this mulch, they're going to have an easy way of access right to the cracks in the foundation, and then they're going to get into the house through there. So what we recommend if you want to deter insect activity in the mulch is ideally you'd want to replace the mulch with something that doesn't retain moisture, like a pea gravel or pea stone. If you really want the mulch for aesthetic purposes, then you can still do like a 6-inch or a foot-long band of pea stone right against the foundation, which doesn't retain as much moisture and would deter insects from coming up against the foundation of the house. Speaking of gardens, a lot of people will border their gardens in with these field stones, and this has a real nice kind of natural look to it. But the thing about these stones, of course, is everything loves to live underneath these. You can get ants and just all sorts of things. I mean, I bet if we go through this line and flip up some of these stones, we can probably find something right now. Take a look under some of these. Okay, so come look at this. This is not a huge colony, but you can see in here how under this stone there's a hive of ants. You see that? Let's look at look at this. See, now these ants are not large right now. The thing with ants, though, is most ants will forage like 8 to 12 feet from their colony. So right here, this is right up against the homeowner's kitchen. We're only 5 feet from the home. These ants, they could very easily forage into the home, into the kitchen. So this is definitely within range of being able to get into the house. Oh, here's another one. You can see how they've arranged the mulch, and they've got their little tunnel entries right there. So there's ants under many of these rocks. So as I'm seeing this, I would ask the homeowner if they'd ever had a problem with ants getting into the kitchen or anything like that. Looks like this person's got some other kind of pests here too. Looks like a Michigan brown snake. You can see anything can live under these garden rocks. So if you've ever been around large trees, this is probably a familiar sight where you go up to the tree and you see all these big ants climbing around on the tree. The very large black ants are carpenter ants. Now, carpenter ants are a wood-destroying ant. They actually gnaw the wood and will eat out the inside of a tree, or they can do that to a home if they're in the wood in your home. Now, this tree here is just about 15 feet from the home. It's far enough away that it's not an immediate concern, but it's something I would keep an eye out for if I lived here, because again, these ants will forage, 8 feet, 12 feet. Now, having carpenter ants in a large tree like this is not unusual. It can become dangerous if the tree falls down or if you cut the tree down, because the ants will start looking for a new colony, or they'll start sending foragers out to try and find a new place to live if this tree were to be cut down or trimmed. And just to show you what carpenter ants do to a tree, over here we've cut a limb off to have a look at it. So right here we have a cutaway piece from a tree that had a carpenter ant infestation, and you can just see what what carpenter ants do to the inside of a tree. They'll go through and eat out all the wood in here, and it becomes very brittle, and eventually it can kill a tree or knock it down. Now, they also will do this to your home if they forage into your home and start setting up a colony, especially under windows and places like that where there's moisture. So it's a rather serious thing, and if you want to see how they can really hollow out a tree, we've cut away a branch segment here. This tree has carpenter ants very bad, and you can see how they've hollowed out the entire inside of the branch. So this might not be a big deal right now as far as ants getting into the house, but the thing is, this tree and that other tree over there we looked at, they're both close to the house. If these trees ever fall over or they're cut down, those carpenter ant colonies are going to get displaced and they're going to start looking for another home, probably foraging into the house. So we find that a lot of people who do have carpenter ants, it can happen when they've recently cut down a tree or a tree has fallen down. So this is definitely something that you're going to want to be aware of. Now, one other thought, we saw how the ants could hollow out a branch in that tree. We know that there's carpenter ants in this tree, so we can only imagine what this tree might look like on the inside over time. And we also see that several of these branches are hanging over the house. And if you look on the roof here, you can see that these branches will fall down onto the roof, which tells me that there is a way for carpenter ants to get on the roof. We know they're in the tree. They're probably throughout the tree. This hangs over the roof. The branches fall. The ants are in the branches. They could get onto the roof. And the roof is another very common spot for carpenter ant problems. They'll often get under the shingles at a place where the roof is somewhat wet or vulnerable. This is something that this homeowner is going to have to keep an eye on. So one thing about any house is everybody wants to keep the cold air out, especially in an older farmhouse like this. And to do this around the doors, typically you have something called weather stripping, which is like a little rubber seal that goes on the bottom of the door, and it's meant to kind of protect against drafts coming in under the doors. Now, one other thing that weather stripping does is it keeps insects out. Doors are a very common place that insects will try to get in, just crawling over the sill. But if we look here at this door, we see that we see this here. We see this weather stripping is all ripped and fraying off. It's not exactly in good condition. And when the weather stripping is ripped off or it's torn like this makes it easy for insects to go under, especially earwigs and spiders and things like that. So if you really want to get a good level of protection against bugs getting in, making sure your weather stripping is in good condition is very important. And I've seen homes like this before where you open the door, and right when you open it you can see all sorts of earwigs and bugs right on the sill there. So the weather stripping on your doors is definitely something you're going to want to check. So this isn't a huge deal, but I just noticed that one of their floodlights up there, there's no light in the socket. That's probably going to be full of wasps and yellow jackets come later in the season. And I know a lot of people, the floodlights burn out or they break and they don't want to get up there and change them because they got to get the ladder out or whatever. But an empty light socket like that, that's the sort of thing that a stinging insect will make a nest in. So I would tell the homeowner to get up there and put a light in. So most modern homes are going to have either aluminum or vinyl siding, and sometimes in the siding, this is a location where you can get a lot of yellow jacket activity, especially around the seams. Here on this vinyl siding, we can see the seams are kind of loose here. I can get almost my whole hand into it. On aluminum siding, a lot of times they're not screwed down tight enough and you can get your hands underneath, and these are the sort of places that yellow jackets will fly in and out of. I want to draw your attention to some of the damage in the siding here, like this sort of hole. Walking around the house, we saw several locations like this, and the homeowner told me that on other days they'd seen yellow jackets going in and out. So if you have siding where there's gaps or the seams aren't tight or there's holes and cracks, this is just going to increase the likelihood that yellow jackets are going to get in here ultimately. These gaps are, I mean, look at that. These are absolutely huge. You definitely want to make sure that that these gaps are sealed down or filled in, or to do the best you can with it. And over here we see a big firewood pile. Anytime you have big piles of wood like this near the home, you're definitely creating a environment conducive for snakes, but also for rodents, not to mention whatever insects or ants were in the wood that you brought and stacked next to the house. Not saying that, that you shouldn't stack wood like this, but it's just, again, it's something you need to be aware of. So when most people think about bugs in the house, they think about the basement. And there is a reason why insects tend to get into the basement. Insects, as we've talked about, they crawl in along the foundation. And one of the spots that they get in is around these basement windows. And so you always want to make sure that your basement windows are sealed up as best they can be, especially if you got an old farmhouse like this. So what I noticed right away, the homeowners told me that she has a real problem with box elder bugs in the basement. And I look here and right away I can see a bunch of box elder shells, and this screen here is just full of dead box elders. This is the spot where they're getting in here. And I look here and I see that there's a big gap between this wooden frame and the foundation all the way around. And I've looked at all the other basement windows and we have a similar gap. So one thing this homeowner could do would be to go around and make sure that all these gaps are caulked with a nice exterior foundation caulk. And that would go a long way towards preventing all those box elders from getting in. So with this one, it looks like someone did try to caulk years ago, but it's all coming off now. And we can see that the foundation itself is starting to, starting to crack and fall apart there. So this definitely needs to be resealed. Well, on behalf of Creature Control, thanks for watching. If you want more information, visit our website at www.creaturecontrol.net for all sorts of great info on Michigan's common wildlife and pest species and lots of other do-it-yourself tips.